It's officially time to judge the 2023 Boston Red Sox. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbin. The 2023 Red Sox season is officially over. It ended on a win at least, but the season certainly did not go to plan. There were a lot of ups, a lot of downs, but how did each individual do on this team? That's what we're going to try and figure out today, because today what we are doing is we are going through and we are grading every single person that appeared in a Boston Red Sox uniform that had a significant impact on the 2023 Red Sox. That includes players, the front office, management, and we're also going to be talking about the ownership as well. We're going to be talking about everything, grading everyone, and trying to figure out who did well and who did not so well during the 2023 Red Sox season. But before we do anything, I need to say a real quick rest in peace to one Tim Wakefield. I have been watching the Boston Red Sox for 20 plus years. Most of you guys on this channel have been watching it longer than I have. Some of you have been watching this shorter than I have, but in that entire time span, no matter how long you've been watching the Boston Red Sox, Tim Wakefield was a true pillar in Red Sox Nation, both on the field and off the field. He was one of the main voices of Red Sox Nation, and to hear that news was absolutely heartbreaking. And I think that's for a lot of people as well. So rest in peace, Tim Wakefield. You will be missed by not only Red Sox Nation, but baseball fans everywhere. Okay, so we got a bunch of pictures here again. Players, ownership, management, everything. We're going to grade them all, starting with the players. And the first name on this list, Triston Casas. Triston Casas, to me, is an extremely easy S-tier player, right? He spent a ton of time improving every single facet of his game. He was one of the best rookies in Major League Baseball this year. His offense was incredible. His defense wasn't that great, but he was improving towards the end of the year. There are a lot of really great things coming for Triston Casas, and he had an absolutely fantastic 2023. Mauricio Llovera, we're going to give him a C here. He really didn't do anything fantastic. He wasn't a bad pitcher. He wasn't a great pitcher. He was just sort of somewhere there in the middle. James Paxton, I'm going to give James Paxton a C, and that's because we're grading the entire season, right? Not the second half, the entire year. For the first half of the season, James Paxton was fantastic. For the second half of the season, James Paxton was terrible. It just sort of averages out, in my opinion. Joe Jakes is getting a D+, C- there. Again, there were some really bad outings from Joe Jakes. There were some decent outings from Joe Jakes. Overall, I think it averages out to a bit negative, but not as negative as some of these other guys. Joely Rodriguez, that's an F, right? He just did not spend enough time with this team, and when he did, he looked fine for a little bit, but most of his numbers were really, really tough to look at. He simply did not have the impact that we were hoping for at the beginning of the year. Justin Garza, another guy who I'm going to give an F to, right? I don't know if you guys even remember Justin Garza. He was here for a lot of the first half of the season, wasn't really around for the second half of the season, was really good for a second, and then struggled mightily for most of the year. Justin Turner, I'm going to give Justin Turner an A, man. Justin Turner is the guy I loved this year. He was fantastic. This is a guy who completely represents what it means to be a Red Sox. This is a guy who did really well at the plate. He was one of your most clutch hitters this year. He had one of his best offensive seasons. He played through a disgusting injury. He deserves to be at the top of this tier list. Caleb Ort, that's another guy. That's an easy F, right? Zach Kelly, when he was here, he looked pretty good, but he wasn't really here long enough to make that big of an impact. Not his fault by any means. Just simply wouldn't make sense to grade him on this tier list. Kenley Jansen's another guy who I'm going to give an A to. I think there are a couple of you guys who don't really love what Kenley did this year, but when you're saving games at an 87% clip for the Red Sox compared to what you saw in 22, it was an absolute different story with him in the ninth inning. There were some mess ups and there were some injuries. That's why he's not in the S tier, but he had a really good season. Kike Hernandez, again, another easy F, right? He didn't do anything offensively for you. He didn't do anything defensively for you. Just not a great year for Kike. Corey Kluber, again, another real easy F for Corey Kluber. Is there really anything positive to take out of Corey Kluber's 2023 season? Cutter Crawford, I'm going to give Cutter a C. I think what we saw from Cutter towards the end there was really great. There were some stretches where it was a bit of a problem. I think one thing that Cutter needs to work on next year is being able to take those good starts and stretch them out into 6-7 innings. But what we saw in that 4 or 5 inning sort of stints from Cutter this year was really, really encouraging. Reese McGuire, I'm going to give Reese a C too. I don't think he did anything exemplary this year. I think he was fine defensively. I think he was fine offensively, right? I just think he was a fine backup catcher for the Red Sox. Spent some time on the IL. Nothing really positive or negative this this year from Reese McGuire. Nick Pivetta, I'm actually going to give Nick Pivetta a C plus B minus. If we're grading the entire season, right, he did not do well as a starter for the first half of the year. Then he was moved to the bullpen and he really improved every facet of his game. He looked fantastic out of the bullpen. Even in his starts down the line this year, he looked great. I think he did a lot of work in the bullpen that really bumped his grade up. Rob Refsnyder, I'm going to give Rob a C plus B minus as well. You could put him in the B category. What he was in charge of doing was hitting lefties. And what he did this year was hit lefties really well. He did his job fantastically. And for me, that's why he's in the B plus C minus category. The problem is, right, he's just not super versatile when it comes to at the plate. That to me kind of prevents him from being in that B tier. Pablo Reyes, I'm going to give Pablo a B. He was a spark plug for the Red Sox for a while. He came in and really helped out in an area that was really hurting for a long time in this Red Sox lineup. And he did some fantastic things and he sort of came out of absolutely nowhere, right? I really love the season we saw from Pablo Reyes this year. John Schreiber, I'm going to give John Schreiber a D plus C minus. He missed a lot of time this year. I think when he was on the field, he really didn't look like himself all that much. There were a lot of runs given up by John Schreiber this year. This is someone who I'm hoping bounce back next year or is in a big trade package this offseason. Ryan Sheriff, again, not a guy who had a lot of impact. He was sort of a guy who came in for 2 or 3 games. I threw his name on here because I think he deserves to be in this conversation, but simply did not do a whole lot. Trevor Story, I'm going to give Trevor Story a C, and this is the reason why I'm going to give him a C. Offensively, not very good, right? But he did come back before he was supposed to come back because he wanted to help this team. Defensively, he was absolutely fantastic. Is he living up to his contract this year? No, but what we saw defensively for Trevor Story is enough to keep him out of that D and F range, and his bat started to wake up towards the end of the year. He finished the year on a 6-game hit streak. There were a lot of encouraging signs from Trevor Story going into 24. Alex Verdugo, I want to put Alex Verdugo in the A category, but he just simply fell off a cliff towards the end of the year, and that's why, to be honest with you, hitting .233 in his last 58 games is not good, right? He was great defensively, but he was great in the first half, but he fell apart in the second half to the point where it kind of dragged him below that B tier, which is where I would have put him if he continued to hit the way he hit. Garrett Whitlock, I'm going to put in the D plus C minus category, right? When he was starting, there were starts that looked great, there were starts that did not look great, and overall, I think it was a bit more negative this year from Garrett Whitlock. It looks like based on injuries and the inability to stretch him out in this rotation, Garrett Whitlock feels like a key candidate for the bullpen in 24. Josh Witkowski, I'm going to give Josh Witkowski a C plus B minus as well. I think there was most of the year here, he was really great. There were stretches where he kind of fell apart, right? But I think overall, this was a really productive season from Josh Witkowski, who 1 year ago in this exact same video was in the F tier. Connor Wong is another guy that I'm going to put in the C plus B minus tier. He had a lot of errors behind the plate this year, but overall, his pop time was really great to second base. He was a good defensive catcher, and he was actually really kind of sneakily good at the plate for a catcher in 2023. He just wasn't anything super special, which is why he's going to be in that C plus B minus range. Masataka Yoshida, I'm going to give Masa a B. His entire year put together is a really great rookie season. He'd probably come in 5th in Rookie of the Year voting. He made a lot of adjustments this year, and I think next year I'm going to expect a big year from Masa, but overall, despite the slow ending here, he had a really solid rookie year. Yu Chang, you know what? I'm going to give Yu Chang a C. I think his offense was kind of abysmal, right? But he did have some monster shots. But what he did do and why he's not lower on this totem pole is the stability he brought to the defense, right? When he was able to play on the field, he brought a lot of stability defensively in an area that really desperately needed that. Chris Martin's an extremely easy S, right? Chris Martin had one of the better reliever seasons we've seen in a very long time. He helped out guys like Pivetta and Josh Winkowski this season. He was an absolute menace to opposing batters. He was absolutely fantastic this year. I don't think it gets better on this team than Chris Martin in 2023. Jarren Duran's another guy who I'm going to put in the A tier. I think what we saw from Jarren Duran this year was incredible. The only reason he's not in the S tier is because there were some pretty large stretches here where he was well below average, but the defensive improvements, the ability to utilize his speed during games was absolutely incredible. Offensive approach looked much better. He certified himself as a big league player in 2023 and definitely deserves to be in a high tier. Rafael Devers, I'm also going to put in the A range. And again, Rafi had a down year this year, but he still ended up with 30 home runs, 100 RBIs. He also had a well above average OPS plus. The defense, in my opinion, is the only thing keeping him from the S tier, right? His defense was horrible this year, and it's something he needs to improve on in 2024. But overall, even on a down year, Rafael Devers still had one of the best offensive seasons on the Boston Red Sox. Brian Bayo, I'm going to give a B plus A minus to. And the reason it's not an A is because there were some downs with Bayo this year. There were a lot of issues in the second half. He sort of got burnt out towards the end, but overall, Brian Bayo was sort of your workhorse in this rotation this year. He made a lot of really great adjustments mid-season, which is a really great sign. And for your full first season Major League Baseball, it was a pretty solid year for Brian Bayo. Ceddanne Rafaela. Now, this might not really be fair because Ceddanne Rafaela was only up here for a few games, but what we saw from Ceddanne was absolutely fantastic, right? He was doing well at the plate. He was making some plays in the outfield. He was running the bases. Honestly, the only reason he's not in a tier above this is because we just didn't see enough from him yet, and he was sort of slowing down as he got more plate appearances, but what we saw so far from Ceddanne Rafaela is really exciting. Adam Duvall is another guy I'm going to put in the B tier. I think what we got from Adam Duvall is exactly sort of what was advertised, right? He brought a lot of power. He brought solid-ish defense, brought leadership to the clubhouse. This is a guy I really liked on the Red Sox. He added right-handed power to the lineup, and I really liked what he did this year despite missing a lot of games. I'm also going to give a B to Brennan Bernardino, who sort of came out of nowhere and was absolutely fantastic for the Red Sox. He was sort of your go-to lefty option this year. He looked absolutely great, and I think this is a guy who could have a spot in the Red Sox bullpen going forward. I'm going to give Tanner Houck a C. I don't think his season was overly negative. I don't think his season was overly positive. I didn't really see a ton of progression throughout the year from Tanner Houck. There was nothing really to suggest that he's going to take a big step forward going into 24, but overall it wasn't negative. It really wasn't positive either. Chris Sale, I'm going to put in the D plus C minus category. I think overall this was his worst year statistically in a full season. He did make 20 starts though, which was great, and why he's not in that DF range, right? He's sort of in that low C range for me, and it's because of the fact that he was so up and down this year. You never really knew what you were getting from Chris Sale, but when he was on, he was absolutely on. Bobby Dahlbeck, again, another guy who's not really an impact type player. He was good when he was up here. He was fine, right? But he didn't really have enough game or sample size to make a legitimate impact on the team. And Manuel Valdez is another guy who I'm going to put in this C/D range. I think Manuel Valdez had some good points, had some low points. The defense leaves a lot to be desired, right? But at points you saw that he looked like a legit major league player, and I really like that out of him. So it certainly wasn't a D or an F for Manuel Valdez. Nick Robertson, I'm going to give Nick Robertson a C. Again, this is another guy who was just sort of there, right? He had some good moments. He had some rough moments. There were never really any moments where you were like, oh my God, is this Nick Robertson? There were a couple of those, but it wasn't overwhelming. So sort of net neutral for Nick Robertson. Luis Urias seems to me like it's going to be a D. He didn't really do a whole lot. He did have those 2 grand slams, and he brought decent defense to the Red Sox, but he never really improved that average. He wasn't really that on-base guy that we kind of talked about when he first came over here. He was a bit of a meh trade deadline acquisition, right? I think a D makes sense for Luis Urias. Christian Arroyo's another guy who's going to be in that D range. Again, Christian Arroyo had all the opportunities in the world to cement himself in this Red Sox lineup and just simply could not take advantage of them, right? Between injuries and play on the field, it feels like Christian Arroyo is destined to sort of be that backup type utility player, maybe not even on the Boston Red Sox. Ryan Brazier is a real easy F, right? I honestly don't know if this is entirely his fault. He goes to LA and all of a sudden he's so much better. That seems to me like it's pointing towards the Red Sox pitching staff, but overall he just did not have the statistics to be anywhere but an F on this list. Richard Blyer is sort of the same thing, right? David Hamilton, I know there are a couple guys on here that really love David Hamilton. Shout out Mike, but David Hamilton did not field well. He did not hit well. He ran the bases okay, but he really didn't add anything positive to the Boston Red Sox. That's sort of it for players, right? So let's talk about the 3 big other parts of the Red Sox organization, starting with Alex Cora. Now, this has been a heated debate lately. It's been real heated on the Red Sea Radio as to whether or not Alex Cora is the man for the job. I'm going to put Cora in the C category this year. I think Alex Cora did a great job with the younger core of this team. I think a lot of the things that went wrong with the Red Sox can't be directly pointed to Alex Cora, but I also don't know if Alex Cora added so much positively to put him into that B, A, S tier range. I think there were mistakes by Cora this year, but I also think there were some really big wins for Cora this year. I think it was sort of a net neutral, and I'm excited to see what he can do with the team next year. As for Chaim Bloom, we're going to give him a D plus C minus. I think when we're looking at this tier list, right, a lot of the guys in the A category were brought in by Chaim Bloom, right? Chris Martin, Justin Turner, Kenley Jansen. Even in that B category, you get Masataka Yoshida, Brennan Bernardino, Adam Duvall, Pablo Reyes, right? He brought in a lot of good on this team. He just didn't really do anything to supplement it at the deadline. And he went into the season with the rotation you had and the shortstop / middle infield that you had. It never really was set up for success. So Chaim Bloom avoids the D because of the positives in free agency, but probably should be in that D to F range if we're being honest. Now, as for ownership, I'm going to put him in the same category as Chaim Bloom, right? I think they had opportunities this offseason at the deadline to really push Bloom to get guys or do something, and they didn't, and that's sort of been the theme over the last couple of years. We'll see if that changes anytime soon, but I think they deserve a D as well. If we're talking about the Red Sox as a whole and what their total grade should be, in my opinion, you're probably looking at a C minus. I think 5 out of 6 of these months you did really well, then you completely decide to give up and crap the bed in September. I think there was a lot of growth during the 2023 season, and the difference between last year and this year, even though you finished with about the same record, is that there's hope going into 2024, right? You're starting to see these pillars. A lot of these guys in the C plus and over range are with your team going into 2024. There's a lot to grow on. There's a lot of opportunity, and that was, to me, is part of it being a successful season. I think for a lot of fans here, it was about winning the World Series. He didn't do that, so it's a failure. I don't know if that was a goal for the ownership in the front office. I think this year was meant to be a bridge year into 2024, and for me, that was a successful bridge year. So that was my tier list, grading every single Red Sox player I could think of. Let me know in the comment section down below. I'm sure which ones you disagree with, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of them, and which ones you agree with. Let me know who your all-star MVP was of the 2023 Red Sox. Let me know all your thoughts on the 2023 season in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this video. One more time, a huge rest in peace to Tim Wakefield. Prayers for the Wakefield family. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.